kind of go round robin style, but what I want to make sure that everyone is really clear about is that we have two sets of districts up here. So Monica and Chris are going to be running for District 5, okay? And then Lani is running for District 1. So they're going to get the same questions, but obviously the answers are going to be different because they're different candidates, but they're also going to be a little bit more different because they're different districts, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and welcome each of the candidates for a 2-minute opening statement. I'm just going down the stage here, and then we'll keep going round robin style with the questions. I'll go ahead and read the questions out. And the question responses will be about 3 minutes apiece, and then we'll try to leave some time at the end for some Q&A from the audience, okay? All right, this is a great opportunity for us kind of early. It's sooner than we think. March is coming very quickly to hear about the candidates, why they're running, what they know about their districts, and what kind of priorities they would bring forward. So I'll go ahead and open it up here for the candidates to give a 2-minute opening statement. Our timekeeper is going to be Hector here. He's going to give you a 30-second sign and then a little, maybe, what is that, orange or pink or salmon stop sign when it's time for you to stop. So here we go. Opening statements. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it was 1.5.
No, I'm changing. Because I'm in charge. So, up to 2 minutes. You don't have to take it all. Less is more sometimes. Here we go.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica Martinez, and I'm running for 5th District Supervisor. I have been a public servant my entire life. Public service runs in my family. My father was a fire captain, my mom was an elementary school teacher, and both were actively involved in their unions. My dedication to public service really started when I came out as a young adult in my conservative Mexican-American family. It's the first time that I experienced the harsh realities of discrimination and rejection, and since then I've dedicated my life to fighting for those who are most vulnerable and ensuring that everybody has a voice. If you ask me what I'll do as 5th District Supervisor, I'll focus on 3 things: recovery, resilience, and representation. Recovery, because our community has been through so much over the last few years, and we deserve everything that the county has to offer to get us back on our feet. Resilience, because it's not enough to simply survive. We deserve to thrive. And representation, because wouldn't it be a refreshing change to have a woman's voice on the Board of Supervisors? So please join me in bringing a fresh voice to the 5th District and support my campaign for 5th District Supervisor. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lani.
You can tell by my earlier question that I'm a rabble-rouser. I am really honored to be invited to this forum. Bernie Sanders is a hero and a role model for me because he has been consistently in action for over 6 decades as an advocate for the people. I'm running for 1st District Supervisor to bring honesty, integrity, environmental science principles, and community justice back to the role of supervisor. I am a kitchen table grassroots leader, and I look forward to working with you as members of this district to co-create solutions to the difficult problems we are facing today. My name is Lani Faulkner, and I am a scientist, mom, youth mountain biking coach, Sierra Club Executive Committee member, public transit activist, and an advocate for labor, LGBTQIA+, and BIPOC rights. I believe our county can be a leader in creating strong environmental, housing, and labor policies. It is critically important to listen to and work with you on issues that impact our workforce and neighbors, including affordable housing and homelessness, disaster preparedness, and community connectedness, where our children can once again walk and bike safely to school, where everyone, including our seniors and people with disabilities, can have access to to an affordable, vibrant quality of life. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here. I deeply appreciate it. It's always refreshing and uplifting to see people who genuinely care about what's happening in their communities and in government showing up this way. So thank you. My name is Christopher Bradford, and I'm running for the 5th District Supervisor position. I'm running because when I needed my county there for me, it wasn't. I lost my home in the CCU fires, and I directly experienced the gap between what citizens need from government and what they're receiving from government. And there's a lot that needs to be changed. I'm a fierce advocate for my community and have been for a long time. And my community right now is suffering deeply. I have children growing up in the schools here. I have businesses here. I've got deep roots here. And I want our communities to have a future. And right now, with some of the issues that we're experiencing around housing, around infrastructure, these things are so important, and we're not going in the right direction. When my kids graduate high school, they're not going to be able to afford to live where I live. You know, they're going to have to leave, and some of your children have already left, right? Yeah, that needs to stop. I want our communities to be enriched. I want our communities to thrive and not just survive. And we only get that with real advocacy. We need a person in position who not only has skin in the game, but is willing to fight, willing to do uncomfortable things, willing to push people, willing to be the squeaky wheel. Right? They say in government, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'm going to make a lot of noise for the 5th District. Thank you.
Thank you so much, candidates. So we're going to start off with a question. This is going to be the same question for everybody. So we would like you to please identify the top 2 issues in your district you are running for, and how would you address these issues if elected? And please try to be specific as you can about policies and tactics you might move forward to address these issues. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. As a candidate in the 5th District, I've been talking a lot to our residents about the issues that matter the most. And so this may change over time as I continue to talk to people. But the top 2 issues that I hear about the most is 1, the impact of climate change on our community, and 2, our lack of adequate representation. So to begin with, the impact of climate change. Whether it is the intense heat that we've experienced that increases our fire danger, or the incredible wet winter that we've had, and the storms and flooding and landslides that we've had, it has been such a difficult few years, decade, up here in the San Lorenzo Valley and in Scotts Valley in the 5th District. And we need to focus on recovery so that we can bounce back from these disasters, get back on our feet, help our neighbors get back in their homes as quickly as possible, but also prepare for upcoming disasters. We need to focus on vegetation management. We need to focus on building resiliency centers, recovery centers, when we lose our power, when we lose our access to our schools and because of road closures, right? We have a lot of work to do to respond and prepare for the upcoming impact of climate change, because we know we have a lot of work to do, but it's not going anywhere anytime soon. The second thing, I mean, this sounds really basic, but adequate representation. Sometimes when you're in the 5th District, all you want is clean drinking water, like our friends in Big Basin Water deserve. You want roads to drive on, right? You need basic power, basic broadband connectivity. Those are challenges that we experience in the 5th District, and we need an advocate who doesn't let us fall through the cracks any longer. We have been left up there to fight for ourselves, and yes, our self-sufficiency in the 5th District is a strength, but we deserve much, much more, and we need an advocate who's going to bring every single bit of public resource that the county and the state and the federal government has to offer to support our residents. Thank you.
Top 2 in your district. And how many minutes? 3 minutes. Okay, great. Up to 3. Don't have to take longer.
Great. So the 2 top things that I have heard from people in our district in terms of importance are housing being number 1. Now, I'm going to talk more about housing in the second segment question that comes after this one. So I really want to focus on disaster preparedness. When we talk about disaster preparedness, I think of this as an overarching umbrella that actually addresses a lot of issues. So we're talking about, of course, floods and fires. As we're getting drier, as we have less water available to us, fires are becoming increasingly more of a risk for our communities, as it is, I know, with District 5. We also have the same issues in District 1. We have a whole rural component that goes way up, all the way up to the line up above in the hills. So it's really important that we help manage those systems and manage the brush, as Monica mentioned, and that we can create fire-safe communities. But I want to take us kind of a higher level, and that is our environmental perspective. Right now, we have the Climate Action Plan with the city and the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan with the county. And these two programs and the collaboration that we do across the county are really essential. It's time that we actually put a lot more energy and effort into understanding and implementing these plans, because it is these plans that will actually help address all of the issues that we're facing, including the floods and the fires, as well as epidemics and other things. And when you take the next step level down, you say, well, what is one of the most important things that contributes to our environmental risks? And that is transportation. So we can do a lot with transportation. We have the power around that, and how can we address transportation? Well, we can put money into robust public transportation systems, and we can create ways that are safe, that we can get out of our cars and actually access one of the greatest things that we've had this opportunity, funded by the state, to build our rail line, is really an important aspect to our community. So a lot of you know that we worked very hard as a community to buy our rail line. The rail line goes all the way from Watsonville to Santa Cruz, and that's something that we can put a lot of energy and time into supporting. And that's something also that the current candidate has actually been undermining. The state of California, with the CAFD, the Climate Adaptation Plan for Transit Infrastructure, that is one of their #1 priorities. And so we need to be in alignment with the state and federal government. Also, response, recovery, and resilience, and expediting bureaucratic processes so that we can bring in more grants, more money, and more support for our community. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So the conversations that I've been having with my neighbors and what I've experienced myself have made it very clear that the two most important issues in my district, the fifth,
Hold your mic right up to
Is that better?
Yes.
The most important issues in the 5th District are infrastructure and the cost of living. And these are broad umbrellas, of course, but when we talk cost of living, for instance, we're talking about housing, we're talking about childcare, affordable housing, and the lack thereof. This is a huge issue in the 5th District. I have neighbors who've lost the house that they were renting and been unable to find something affordable in the same range. And these are people who just rented 4 or 5 years ago, let alone older folks on fixed incomes who've been in the same place for a while. Right? We have a huge issue, not just with homelessness, but housing insecurity. Right? And a lot of that comes from county government. We have a situation where we've had a no-build culture in Santa Cruz County for going on 30 years now. Right? And it may have been a great idea at first. I know we didn't want to become a bedroom community for a larger city like San Jose. But having a no-build culture is a negative build culture, because when you lose properties, they don't get replaced. And now we're in a situation where we are the most expensive county to rent in the country. That's insane. It's unacceptable. And the movement we needed to make to avoid that needed to be done 20 years ago. But we can start now. We can start by removing obstacles, by changing the culture in our planning departments, to start with yes instead of trying to find a no. Getting buildings built, right? We have to increase inventory. We have to get fire victims back in their homes. We have to make it so that neighborhoods have the right housing for their neighborhood. You know, I understand that sometimes folks get concerned, you know, about building and increasing inventory because they're worried that it won't be the right building for their neighborhood that comes. But we can find the right building for each community. You know, there are different options that are available, right? A duplex here may be the right choice for Scotts Valley. Maybe 4 tiny homes on a single family parcel is the right choice for Bentonville, right? Each area can have its own solution. So while the broader issue of reduced housing needs to be addressed and can be addressed by changing county culture, we have to be flexible. We have to be willing to try different things. We have to bring in people with fresh ideas, and we have to, most of all, be passionate about making the change that's necessary to move that forward. And when it comes to infrastructure, we have aging water facilities, we have aging roads, we have, unfortunately, public transportation that doesn't meet the needs of our community. All these things can be addressed by advocacy, by having a person who's willing to go and connect with Jimmy Panetta, connect with Gail Pelley, connect with Senator Laird, bring those federal infrastructure monies down to the county at the level where we can make an impact for our community and for our neighborhoods. And if we do these things, I feel like we'll have a great and bright future in the 5th District.
Thank you so much. So there was a lot of talk about housing by everybody, not surprisingly. So next question is, what kind of housing do you believe is most needed in the district you're running in? Try to get specific too about when you talk about affordable, what does affordable mean to you if that's part of the landscape of housing you're interested in? All right.
Thank you. So I want to start by saying that I have had a career that's been dedicated to addressing homelessness and housing affordability. Starting when I was working on Skid Row, developing permanent supportive housing for women who are experiencing homelessness, to today, I'm CEO of the largest health and human services nonprofit in the county, and we deliver a number of housing support services throughout this county. And so through this work, I want to say that I believe that housing is a human right, and I believe that housing is healthcare. So when I think about the 5th District, I'm not just thinking about our small community, I'm thinking countywide and statewide and regionally. We have a huge housing affordability crisis, as you all know, and as you all experience. So we need to focus on developing further affordable housing, and we need to do it in a smart way. We need to do it in a way that is appropriate for the communities that live there. We need to make sure that each district is doing their fair share, so the 5th District is stepping up and is providing its fair share of affordable housing. And that may look different in the San Lorenzo Valley, where we don't have the infrastructure. We're on septic. We can't do a major high-rise, right? We're not going to do that in Ben Lomond, but we can focus on ADU development and new permitting processes that allow us to grow in the ways that we're allowed to up there. And then we look at the corridors that we can grow in. We do have corridors in the San Lorenzo Valley. We do have corridors in Scotts Valley where we can do our fair share and contribute to affordable housing. And while we're doing it, we also need to meet our climate goals. We need to focus on transit options. We need to be a more bikeable, a more walkable community. And we need to invest in greater capacity, greater number of units in smaller spaces where people can travel, live, work in a sustainable way. So that's what I think about when I'm thinking about affordable housing. And then also we have a major crisis of homelessness in this community and across the state. And so for those communities, we still need to focus on permanent supportive housing. We need to get people housed first, because the data shows that if you house somebody first and then provide them with supportive services, their costs on the public system will drop. They won't be in and out of the emergency room, out of the hospitals, out of the jails, and we can support them to live a thriving life. And so that's something I'd be majorly committed to as a supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. What Monica said, absolutely. Housing first is absolutely healthcare. We have to get people out of the streets and get them a continuum of care in order for them to even be able to think about getting to the next steps of improving and being successful in getting out of the, let's say if they're having mental health issues or personal health issues or whatever issues that they're going through. There may be some component of our community that will always be reliant on a continuum of care, but that's going to happen everywhere, no matter where we go. And so we have to be realistic about that. When I think about community and building housing and the kind of housing that I would like to see, I want to see the kind of housing that connects us. So what does that mean, connected communities, to me? It means that we build communities that do not separate us, but actually bring us together. It means that we create plazas and connecting spaces. It means that we create warm, cross-generational communities where naturally elderly people feel and interact comfortably with young and middle-aged people, and that there's a forum for that to happen in a natural place where you have plazas and coffee shops and playgrounds and community gardens and community spaces. I also feel that part of the disconnect that we have with our environment is the fact that we are disconnected with each other and we're disconnected with nature. And so how do we address that? I think that if we have nature, urban wilderness spaces within our urban areas, then we can have access and connection to nature. We can have community gardens, and that gives kids at a young age the opportunity to get their hands in the soil, understand the seasons and how it impacts them over time. I also want to say that welcoming beautiful community spaces that are closer to public transit are really essential. If we're going to move environmentally in the positive direction, we've got to get people out of their cars and into public transit or onto their bikes or walking. If people are elderly or feeling or unable to, because of certain disabilities, to ride a bike, they should be able to walk, roll, and have other means of easy access. So that means rezoning and having things like grocery stores within a walkable distance. We should have grocery stores within 5 to 15 minutes of our houses, or a little cafe, or a little restaurant. So all of these things, how do we set up our communities so that we're connected, so that we have easy access, kind of like they did back in the 1940s and 50s, that you have easy access to opportunity, easy access to materials and goods that you might need to get to. Again, density along transit so people can get to farther places if need be. I hear that our community does not want high rises, and I think that we can build communities that connect and still have higher density along transit centers. Thank you very much.
So the question being, what kind of housing does the 5th District need? The answer is housing that we can afford to live in. And by affordable, I mean not spending half or more of our income directly on housing. That's where we are right now. Most folks aren't meeting that 30% number, right? That's the ideal. You're spending 30% of your housing. I remember reading that and just laughing and laughing, 30%. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. That's not happening. So we need practical answers for this, right? We have to build, we have to address the kind of homelessness that is being experienced in the 5th District. Most of the folks who are homeless in the 5th District are homeless because of county policy around rebuilds. We got folks living in trailers, living in yurts, sleeping on people's couches, who are unable to rebuild their homes, right? So I say we need to be targeted. We need to figure out what the problem is in the area that we're representing, and we need to present solutions that target that specific problem. Because then we can make progress, right? We can get things done by chopping that wood and carrying that water. Again, we have to be practical. I want housing to be affordable. I want it to exist, and I want it to be accessible. When I was a young man, I moved out of my parents' house in my early 20s after moving here to California. And I wanted to do that as soon as possible so that I could enjoy my life. So I got a full-time job at Starbucks, and working at Starbucks full-time, I rented a 3-bedroom townhouse in Campbell for $1,450 a month. And I was a bit of a spendthrift. I spent the $600 and got the master bedroom, right? Now, my children, who are much of them are 16, right? In 2 years, you think they're going to be able to rent a bedroom for $600 in Santa Cruz County? Highly unlikely, right? So the housing, in order to be affordable, one has to exist. We have to build. We have to focus on affordability by creating partnerships with builders, creating tax incentives, going out of our way to make it possible for people to build ADUs, and not just making the permitting process easier, making it cheaper. Right? Right? We have the Hello ADO program right now that's supposed to streamline things, but streamlining me getting to know isn't doing anything for me. Right? We need to make it so that folks can build, that they're not financially punished by the building process in such a way that they end up spending money and not having a building at the end. And that's where a lot of people are right now as well. So when I say housing affordability, I want housing that people can afford and still have enough money left over to save and thrive. It's important and we can do it. Thank you.
Okay, halfway through. How's everybody doing?
Doing
Good? Pretty good?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the people who live in your district and what their needs are. One of the advantages of a district system is it's a little bit smaller chunk, right? And so we have a chance to really understand the people who live in the district and those priorities. So can you please give us somebody, the people who live in your district and what their needs are? And you guys all know, but it's 3 minutes. You're doing great.
Thank you for the encouragement. So I want to begin by busting a myth about the 5th District. All right? So for those of you who don't live up there, you probably have an impression of who lives up there. And they're probably not people you're going to see in this room. They're probably pretty conservative, and they're probably somebody who wouldn't elect an LGBTQ supervisor woman. And I want to tell you that the 5th District is changing, okay? And I think that we're ready to have the very first LGBTQ supervisor in the history of our county. We are full of young families like my own. I've got 2 kids at the local elementary school. We are one of the last affordable, we know what that means, places in our county. So we've got a lot of first-time home buyers. We have a progressive community that welcomes diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I love my community, and I feel totally welcome raising the children that I'm raising in this community. We also have a tremendously hard-working community. Many people in the trades, many people who are working multiple jobs to make ends meet, many people who need and deserve everything the public sector has to offer and more. And they aren't getting it right now. They're not getting that support from their supervisors. We have an aging community. We have many seniors who are aging in place, and we saw during the winter storms what happened. You know, they were hardworking folks who committed to living in the mountains for the rest of their lives, but their driveway washed out. Their firewood got wet. They needed support and social services for the first time ever in their life. They needed to ask for help. And there's so much more that our county should be doing. Our social service sector is stepping up to do to support those seniors who are aging in place. Our residents are loving, hardworking people. Many are in the trades, many are in unions, and they deserve affordable childcare so they don't have to work multiple jobs. They deserve transit options. Not everybody drives up there, and man, if you take the bus, you're waiting a long time to get through Scotts Valley and the San Lorenzo Valley. They deserve basic infrastructure. They deserve power. They deserve broadband and connectivity, reliable power and reliable broadband. And they need more from their representative and from their advocate to ensure that they're not left behind. That's what I want to do as the next supervisor for the 5th District. Thank you.
Thank you so much. District 1 is pretty diverse, and as I mentioned, we go all the way up into a very rural community, as well as along the ocean from the harbor, Opal Cliffs, and here in Live Oak. So we're a very diverse community. We also have a large percentage of our community is 65 years old and older, so we have a diversity of ages, diversity of incomes, and diversity of living situations. So we do have a high number of people in mobile home parks, and that's really important because it's some of the last affordable housing left to our communities. We have a large number of working community members, and rural folks who work from home. So some of the things that are really important are the broadband that Monica referred to. This is really important not just to access to get on and surf the internet or to work from home, but it's actually really important for safety. Because when you have the fires coming in and everything is destroyed and you don't have access to broadband, you have no way to get information in and no way to get information out. So that's really, really critical for our rural environmental community members, our rural community members. Safety during rural disasters are some of the other issues. How do we make sure that we can get our fire trucks in and address landslides and other issues that we saw in the floods as well. We have a large number of retirees, so some of the issues that we need to think about are robust medical services, transportation, especially as people no longer drive, including lift line and access to groceries, activities, and safe walking in our community. So fire safety, road repair, I hear a lot from folks is very important. I'm hearing more and more from families about safe streets. We've seen that the rate of endangerment of people's lives, children, families that feel that their children can't even bike to school anymore because their streets are no longer safe for them to do so. So that's actually shared with seniors and any of us who ride our bikes around or walk. We have increasing mental health issues in our community, impacting people of all ages. Food insecurities, and of course we've talked a lot about housing insecurity this evening. And so I want to point out that our average home price right now is about $1.3 million. $1.3 million. And so that means you would have to have about $9,000 per month to afford that home. That's after paying $260,000 for your down payment. The average household makes about $3,300 a month, so you do the math, it doesn't work. So kind of addressing the last question, how do we deal with affordable housing? That's going to be really, really important, providing more housing, different kinds of multifamily housing for our community. Thank you.
So the 5th district is a microcosm of the broader county, in that we have people representing a huge swath of citizens who live in our county. We have folks who are faculty at UCSC. There's a chunk of those folks down there in the 5th. And we have folks living extremely rural up in Boulder Creek who may not be able to get fresh running water right now, depending on what's happening with Big Basin water at the moment, right? So we have a broad swath of individuals. But one thing that runs through for everyone is the importance of infrastructure and the importance of addressing this housing situation, right? It's something that matters to everyone. So when we're looking at the 5th district, we have to understand that there's not a one-size-fits-all answer for every community in the 5th. We have to know the communities that we're dealing with. We have to connect with folks in Ben Lomond, in Boulder Creek, in Pasatiempo, in Santa Cruz City, because that's how broad a swath of people we have in the 5th district. So it's not going to be enough to just address the large issues that we see that are extremely public. We have to get down there and connect with folks at an individual level to make sure that we can meet their needs. And that's something the county hasn't been doing. There hasn't been an aggressive transparency, and there hasn't been an aggressive advocacy for persons inside our district. And that's something that I'm hoping to change as a 5th district supervisor. I think it's important. I think it's what's going to matter for people. Right? There are programs right now that have been in existence for a long time that could help disaster victims that they are not aware of. Right? There are grants available that people have never heard of because the advocacy isn't there. There's no one marketing, there's no one letting the community know, hey, this is coming up, this is something important that you need to be aware of, that we're gonna vote on. Right? I want that transparency. I want to be able to tell the community, this is what the board and I are working on together. What are your thoughts? Right? I want to listen and then respond. Instead of voting on things based on whatever the politics are and then rolling out and trying to sell what I voted on to the people. No. We have to connect, we have to listen, we have to be present. And I think that's something that everyone in the 5th district wants, regardless of their neighborhood. Everyone has needs that need to be met. And they can only be met if the person in the seat is listening, is open to ideas, and is ready to fight for them. So I personally live in Boulder Creek, right? But I have businesses in Scotts Valley and in Santa Cruz, as a matter of fact. And so I have my feet on the ground everywhere in the district. And so I can understand that you need a different approach for different communities, and you have to represent all the communities in the district. So it doesn't matter to me what a person's personal politics are. If they disagree with me, I like them to disagree with me from a home they can afford with fresh, clean water. They can yell at me and throw tomatoes while they live and thrive. And that's all I want. Thank you.
Okay, wrapping up here. So one of the roles of supervisors is working with the different departments and different agencies. We've heard a little bit about that through the recovery. So for the last question here, as supervisor, how would you work with various county departments and outside agencies to accomplish your goals? There you go.
Thank you. So I have been the CEO of Encompass Community Services for 9 years. We're the largest health and human services organization in the county, and I administer countless county grants and contracts every day. And so I thought maybe it would help by sharing an example of one of the ways that I work with various county departments and agencies to support our community. So several years ago, we looked at the data and we recognized that there was a huge disparity in high quality behavioral health, mental health, and substance use treatment in the South County region of our county. As a county, we had the resources to operate services, right? So I worked with the probation chief, with the health services agency director, with the human services agency director, to get commitment of funds so that way we could support the South County community, predominantly the Latinx community, with the services that they need. But they didn't have the funding for the capital development, because while our county has a big pot of funds, they didn't have the funding that we needed to develop a new behavioral health campus. So then I started to work with our state and federal partners to bring funding into our community. We got a major grant from our managed Medi-Cal agency, $2.5 million. And we started to look at the data, and we saw that other areas across our state were getting behavioral health infrastructure funding, but here in the Central Coast, $0. So I advocated and I worked with Senator Laird to bring forward funding specifically for our region. And we applied for a grant and didn't get it the first time. We worked again with Senator Laird. He worked with the governor's office, and collectively we were able to get an award of $9.5 million to develop our behavioral health center that's about to break ground in Watsonville in the next couple of months. It is a county supervisor's job to take the resources that are available within this county and leverage them to maximize the resources that come into this community. It's not enough just to spend the money that we have. We have to collaborate, we have to partner, we have to be creative, we have to listen to our communities, we have to look at the data, and most importantly, we have to use equity as the lens that we use to allocate those resources. As a supervisor, I can't imagine anybody who has more experience navigating the county funding process than the person who's been the CEO of this large, complicated nonprofit for so many years. And I'm ready to take that experience, the relationships that I have existing in this county, and my commitment and dedication for equity and justice to help support those in the 5th District and everybody across this county. Thank you. Woo!
Well, first of all, I want to say across every agency within the county, at every level, equity and the environment need to be integral from the foundation. Not a tack on, not an add-on, not a oops, we forgot, let's just mention it now, but really integral at every level. So that's important. But as far as how I would accomplish my goals and work with agencies, the first thing I would do is to reach out and to build those bridges. And that means having conversations, sitting down, learning who the people are, what the people do, where there are efficiencies, where there's inefficiencies, and see what people's ideas have been to close those gaps and create connections across agencies. Because I know for some of you who've been working in the homeless and health services agencies, you know that maybe there are redundancies and maybe there are areas that there are gaps that need to be filled. And so I think as a strong team of supervisors, we can work together with the agencies to find the gaps that we can close and the things that we can strengthen. Definitely wanting to find common goals and draw on people's expertise and passion. If people are doing things that they don't enjoy, then they're not going to do the best job. So let's find the right places for people in the work that they want to do. I think it's really, really important that we look at funding outside of the funding that we've been receiving so far, and I know Monica spoke to that. There's a lot of grant money on the table, and we will work hard to do that. I know I worked as a board member of Friends of the Rail and Trail. We worked really hard to fight Measure D. We won against the Measure D. We kept our rail. But part of that work is actually finding grants, and so I was one of the first people to bring a grant into that agency. And that's really important at a supervisor level, that we help the agencies and our work finding more grants across the county. I think it's also important to mention here that we need a PLA. We need a PLA for our labor forces across the county. We need to make sure that we're paying people a living wage. Because one of the greatest systemic problems in this country is the fact that we have this growing wage gap that has grown out of control. And quite literally, it may be beyond the role of supervisor to address that nationally, but we can do things here locally to ensure that we close the gap financially for our local workers as much as possible. So working to be in alignment with state and federal climate goals is really important, and we can talk about that another time. Thank you.
So when it comes to working with other agencies, other individuals who have access to greater funds, connection is important, passion is important, and presence is important. I don't have the experience of being an insider when it comes to negotiations with the county, but I have the experience of being someone on the outside, working hard to bring funds from the federal and state level down to the neighborhoods. I've got a ton of experience organizing my community. We've had serious issues with just folks just not paying attention. The county not adequately regulating utilities and other things that have left folks desperate for attention and for help. And a lot of times, you need the county supervisor to be that bridge in between. And that's part of why our campaign theme is bridging mountain communities. We need someone to go to our federal partners, to talk to Jimmy Panetta and say, hey Jimmy, this is what's happening in our neighborhoods, right? To connect with Gail, to connect with Senator Laird and say, how do we get these infrastructure funds that just got passed down to us at the community level, right? And in order to do that, one, you have to be connected to the community. You have to know what's happening there. You have to be working from that grassroots level so that you know what to say when you connect with these people. And I've done that for my community. I've been present. I've been present where I wasn't necessarily welcome, but I'm fine with being uncomfortable if it gets my people what they need. And that's what we need from our supervisor as well. These connections, these relationships are how things get done. You have to be willing to go out there and fight. Now, it's certainly complicated when it comes to getting funds and grants to the right places in your community, to places where they're needed. Some things require a public partner where you might have a private company that's causing the issues that people are experiencing. So we have to be creative as well. Right? In order to do that, sometimes it helps to be from outside of the structure. It helps to be a person who's experienced where the structure has failed, because then you can find those gaps and close those gaps. And that's what I've been doing for my community for a long time. And that's what I'll do for the rest of the community as well.
Let's give a big round of applause for our candidates. Again, if Monica running for District 5, Lani Faulkner running for District 1. Thank you so much, candidates, for taking the time. So I'd like to invite our city council candidates for the city of Santa Cruz, Joe Thompson and Joy Schendledecker, to come up, please. Joe Thompson is running for District 5, and Joy Schendledecker is running for District 3. We're going to go ahead and move right along into questions. Thanks for coming, you two. All right, here we go. Question 1. What measures can a city council take to ensure the development of a low-income housing? So be as specific as you can about kind of what you think the purview of the city council is, and then what are the policies or tactics you may be able to move forward as a council member. Go ahead and go with Joe first.
Well, thank you everyone for coming and participating. It's really great to see the turnout we have tonight, and really looking forward to having further conversations like this with all you folks. But for those who don't know me, my name is Joe Thompson. I'm running for Santa Cruz City Council District 5, and I was the Starbucks union organizer for our local Santa Cruz union stores. And thank you. And for me, when it comes to affordable housing, this really hits home. And for me, I would not be able to live in Santa Cruz if I did not live in the housing that I live in now. I live in a co-op, El Rio Mobile Home Park. I'm able to afford to live there because it is rent stabilized and is very affordable. If I wasn't living in that housing, I would not be able to live in Santa Cruz. And that to me shows how dramatic this problem is. And for me, we need to ensure the City Council is developing truly affordable low-income housing. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? And for me, there's a lot of different things that can be. But there's 3 main things that I like to focus on the City Council. The first one is establishing and supporting community land trust. These are projects that are really going to help long-term development of affordable housing in our community and keeping it in our community, so we're not building these very expensive rentals that in 50 or so years become market rate again. This will allow for truly affordable housing for decades to come. The second big thing that I want to really focus on, and that's being currently implemented in the City Council, is hopefully raising the inclusionary zoning to about 30% is my goal. Because right now what's happening is we have a 20% inclusionary zoning. And that means that 20% of any affordable housing project usually is going to have affordable units come along with it. But in reality, when it's being built near transit, exactly where we all know it should be being built, a density bonus gets applied. And that can lower the affordability levels from 20 down to 11%. That is not enough affordable housing. And currently we can't just raise it back from 11 to 20. But what we can do, and what I discussed with the city manager, is possibly raising the inclusionary zoning to 30% and having a waiver for projects that don't meet those density bonus requirements. That means we're getting a truly 20%. That's still not enough affordable. But we need to look at the reality of our housing crisis and start tackling those steps head on and continue to fight for more affordable housing that people can really afford to live in. And lastly, we need to partner with our nonprofit leaders in developing really close relationships with them. We cannot be leading to more market rate developments. It is not helping anyone. We need truly affordable housing for students, for seniors, and local working families to be able to afford to live in Santa Cruz and make Santa Cruz strong. So please, help join me in my campaign and help me move Santa Cruz forward. And thank you all so much for being active in our community.
Hi everybody, I'm Joy Schendledecker. You might know of my politics from my mayoral run last year, and my platform and positions haven't changed very much. So, you can just go to my website to see that. It'll be updated soon though. And I have some some specific things that I've been thinking about with housing. I think there's something foundational that we need to work on in order to get past this sort of 60-40 split in our city council makeup and our voting results. And I think we need to reduce the influence of real estate interests, property interests in the city. And one of the only ways to do that, I think, is with actually campaign finance and electoral election reforms. So, for example, having mandatory spending limits instead of voluntary ones, reining in however we can the Santa Cruz Together local PAC that we have, even if it's just through campaigns to let people know that dark money exists in our community, because I think a lot of people don't realize it. And through that, we can, I think, even publicly financed campaigns get better representation so that we're not constantly in the minority when we know that the city is much more evenly divided in terms of opinion. We also need to reform our permanent planning department, similar to the county, although we haven't had the devastation of the CZU fires. We've been dealing in our own house with the permanent planning department for the past year, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And I know plenty of other people across the political spectrum who have also had to deal with this. And it just, your house can literally be falling down around you, and you cannot get a permit, and or it costs you tens of thousands of dollars to get a licensed designer and get through like the actual permit. So that could go a long way. And grandfathering in properties that are already there but aren't up to code. So we can increase our inclusionary ordinance to match the needs of the residents. Ideally, that's 50% because, 50% of people need the housing that's in the bottom 50% of the economic bracket. Let's match. I know politically that won't work, so I'm not naive. But let's incrementally get there. Let's pass a progressive property transfer tax. We probably need electoral reform first. Thank you. Thank you.
And for you guys, a little bit of a curveball. I'll give you kind of a closing statement since I forgot the opening statement.
We did it anyway. We were like, we're just going to fit it in there.
Yes. Well, I'll give you a little extra time at the end, so apologies for that. I just got so excited about the housing question. Okay, so Joy, we'll go to you, and then over to Joe. As the city considers plans for Westcliff Drive and the Wharf, what priorities should be considered?
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know. This is like an impossible question in some ways, but it helps that we're talking about priorities, not the actual things that we're gonna do. So for starters, I think the priorities should be equity. We need an equitable planned retreat and ecological considerations. Those should come before commercial interests and maintaining the status quo. I mean, one way or another, Westcliff Drive is going to change. It is changing already, and we have intensified, we have climate change and the intensification of storms and that damage. It is happening faster than predicted. It's going to continue to probably shock us. Insurance companies are already refusing to insure certain properties. They're leaving the state even. So these properties are it's going to become harder, I think, for people to get their properties insured. And the Coastal Commission is going to limit how much buttressing we can do of the coast. So there's only so much we can do to maintain what's there right now. At the same time, I think our first priorities, the real question we should be asking is how can we prioritize frontline communities that are going to be hit earliest and hardest? Those are often BIPOC communities and poorer communities like the Beach Flats neighborhood, like Paro Valley. And that may not directly affect my district, District 3, but these are our neighbors and our family too. So let's work with them and as a priority in the climate change process. And then I think, what we have now is city staff takes the lead with consultants. And what we need instead is, I think, to flip the model upside down and have neighborhood, community-based assemblies that are bringing up the solutions through the representatives that they elect, and the representatives take it then to staff, because that's sort of how it should work. It's not how it does work, but it's how it should work. So I think I can end there and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Joy. Obviously, agree with a lot of the things that we'll be doing on the City Council will be together. But for me, when it comes to Westcliff and the Wharf, I think there's three things that I would like to focus on and would like to see the council do. And I do recognize that there might not be a progressive majority this cycle. But my hope and my goal is to get one in 2026. And so I'd like to focus on three things, and those are the preservation of natural beauty. We all love Santa Cruz. That's why we're here. It's so beautiful. We love our community, and preserving that natural beauty of Santa Cruz, I think, is going to be really important. I remember when I first got here, I loved to go to Westcliff Drive, and I remember one of the first nights I got Pizza My Heart, was just sitting out there eating it, and it's just one of those nice things that you can enjoy. And I think that's why people love it here, is because we have such a beautiful community. So prioritizing that, we want this to be beautiful for generations to come. And the second thing is resilience to climate change. Westcliff Drive is going to change. We all know that. It's already happening. We're already seeing it, but making sure we're preserving it for generations to come as well is going to be really important. And it's that planned retreats or whatever we decide to move forward has to be with the full community support, bringing people together, having those conversations. And I remember going to the first meetings where we're talking about Westcliff Drive. There was probably about 100 people who showed up to really just learn about the history of how much this has been happening for years and decades. The slow erosion is just going to continue happening, and climate change is only going to exacerbate it. And that this coast is always going to be changing. And we need to make sure that we're protecting our community, protecting our low-income residents who live in these areas, and making sure we have equitable climate policies that benefit everyone. And lastly, specifically when it comes to my district, we're looking at this and making sure we're protecting the residents who live near the San Lorenzo River. Last year, during these floods, we recognized that we were very close to having major flooding issues. And now the city is repairing a lot of the things to make sure we get those FEMA money and disaster relief funds so we can make sure that it doesn't even come close to happening again. And lastly, the one thing that I really would like to see the City Council prioritize is public access and recreation. We want to bring communities closer together. We want communities to thrive and be able to have shared public space. We don't want it to be commercial. We want it for communities to be able to come together and celebrate and have joy and have fun and recognize that this is what Santa Cruz is meant to be. Having those close communities where we can come together and celebrate and bring joy to our coast. That's what I would prioritize in the Santa Cruz City Council. that is in the strategic plan. It's find your joy in Santa Cruz.
No, it's not. They took it out. They took it out.
It was.
I thought that was so funny.
Oh my God.
All right, moving on. So what accountability, and we'll go to you, Joe, what accountability, if any, does an elected official have to a unionized workforce? And how will you demonstrate that?
Well, as someone who, basically my first job, organized their workplace, I think unions have a very special place in my heart. And currently there's 3 union actions I hope you all would join me in supporting. There's UPS getting ready for their strike. It'll be coming up on August 1st. That is specifically in my district. It's happening near the Costco. I forget exactly what street that's on, but if you go to Costco, and you'll see it right there, it's right behind, near the gas station. And that'll be coming up on August 1st. And the next one is Unite Here. I believe they just voted on a strike authorization vote yesterday, so that will be coming up soon as well. And I imagine we'll be hearing from Jeffrey from the Labor Council about when to go to that. And lastly, I'd be supporting our writers and other workers who are going on strike in LA too. Anything you can do to support those actions will be really important. But for me, working directly with unions is going to be my priority. And I already met with the building trades representatives, was endorsed by the Building Trades Council. And to me, it just shows that we need to be working in step and partnership with our union brothers and sisters, because we need to protect our working families and keep good union jobs in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is a union town. We all know this. We have the first 2 unionized Starbuckses in the entire state, right here in our backyard. We had the first ever historic SEIU strike that happened last year as well. We are pro-union, and the council needs to represent that and respect that. And on the council, one of the first things I hope to do is put forward a project labor agreement, a PLA or community workforce agreement. That specifically will help ensure good local union jobs. Now, specifically why I want to do that and why I met with the building trades was because there's over 1,000 applicants for skilled and construction trained labor that are waiting. They want good paying union jobs, but they are waiting to be trained because there is not enough spots for them to have a guaranteed job. But there is 1,000 workers who want to get into this important and meaningful work that are just sitting there waiting. And if we have a project labor agreement in Santa Cruz, and we have one in Santa Cruz County, that will mean that those workers are getting trained and will be in our community for years to come. And another reason I want to have a PLA in Santa Cruz is because a lot of undocumented workers, specifically those in our South County, are coming in Santa Cruz, and they're being threatened with wage theft and having a lot of other problems as well. And that specifically having union representation on job sites will make sure that they are getting paid well above the wages that they deserve, getting prevailing wage at about $90 an hour. That means that we'll have good people who can afford to live and work in Santa Cruz and make our community thrive. And that's exactly what I'll be fighting for in the Santa Cruz City Council.
So I think that our support for labor has to be unconditional, and sometimes that is a little tricky because different labor sectors have different interests. But I think in terms of our local workforce, aside from a PLA and working with the building trades, SEIU at the city level and county level, that's a huge number of employees and city and county residents. And I think our obligation to them is to, first of all, to listen to them and their needs, to hear about what their workplace conditions are, to hear about the relationships in their workplaces between them and their managers. And from visiting strike lines last year, I don't think that our city council and staff has the culture that is really doing that. So I think, having an open door policy with regular meetings, weekly meetings, or office hours, and being available at any time to hear from workers, that they are really who keep our city going, especially the workers that are below middle management. They're doing the work, they're underpaid and understaffed, and we have an obligation. The city council works for their constituents, and they work for their employees. They're supposed to be looking out for their employees, not treating them as the enemy or people that are trying to game the system. They're the employees are just trying to make enough money to live, to not have to live in a van, to be able to feed their kids, to not have to drive 2 hours to get to work both ways. So that's what I think the accountability really comes down to, just on a really local level, is just being available, listening, advocating, and not being a jerk during negotiations. Really just showing up and being open and responsive, and then advocating for those workers to get the raise, to get the COLA, to get the equipment before management level gets those things, and before the police union gets those things. Instead of dragging it all along. I also want to say the temporary workers really get the worst end of the deal. Like, they are left out of the regular contract negotiations, and they're just really, like, whether it's from the city point of view or from the union point of view, they really need to be included in those negotiations and not be left out and not have a living wage. Thanks.
All right, rounded the corner here. This question is really interesting to me as somebody who's been a planning commissioner for a bit and got a little bit of insight about how much of seemingly the city agenda is driven by staff as opposed to our elected officials and the appointed commissions that are supposed to represent the people who live in Santa Cruz. So this question speaks directly to that. So please describe your understanding of the relationship the city council has to various city departments and outside agencies. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be how it is now, but how you envision it.
Who went first? Don't know. I think it's you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, all right, fine. I won't go on about how it is now. I did include that here, and I already talked about this
We can talk a little bit about it.
in my other response, right? Like, what we seem to have right now is a very top-down model, which is not how it's written. That's not how it's supposed to be. You know, the city manager is supposed to work for the city council, and you know, it just seems the other way around. So, I think that what is supposed to happen is, like I said, you know, the populace, you know, elects representatives, and they work for them, and then they direct the staff to do things, and then the staff, at the direction of council, carry out projects and hire other people, sometimes consultants, sometimes, you know, contractors, subcontractors, and so, you know, that's okay, that's fine. I think that as much as we can have bottom-up governance, that's for the better. Speaking of advisory bodies, I have applied for many advisory bodies in the last few years, and even when I was the only applicant for the Transportation and Public Works Commission, I was not appointed, and they instead extended the application period so that they could get more applicants, and then they appointed the person that they wanted, that they, you know, invited to apply. And that's happened several times, and I think, you know, advisory bodies can correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, they're political appointments, and so they end up being stacked with people who are basically in agreement with the council majority. And it's actually gotten a little bit more restricted now because each council member gets a turn at appointing a single person, and they're almost always approved. So what happens is council members are it seems like they're kind of told what they want to hear already. Like, it's a political assessment of an issue being fed to them, not an evidence-based assessment, maybe more often than not. And so, you know, maybe we should be doing these by lottery instead of by political appointment. I know that would be a radical idea for some people, but I think there are more fair ways, like ranked choice voting, like choosing people by lottery, much more representative. You may end up with people that you disagree with on there, but that would be more democratic. I'm a socialist, but that doesn't mean that I think that everybody should be a socialist totally in agreement with me. It is necessarily a democracy, and we will disagree, and we have to work together. Thanks.
specifically when it comes to city council right now, they are completely controlled and managed by staff. They are a rubber stamp, essentially, when it comes down to it, and that's very true. And I think one of the main reasons for that has changed is because they are elected right now, but they aren't really responsive to the constituents that they were elected to represent. They aren't at all. They aren't listening, and they will have public comment on multiple items and still vote whichever way they want to. And for me, it is going out in the community and really hearing what people have to say, because their voices matter more than that staff person who is just telling them what to do. That is the reality of the situation. And for me, when it comes down to city council, having known and now talked to a lot of council members from all across our region, from San Jose, Santa Clara, from Capitola, down to Monterey, and even beyond, this is not the way it is designed to be. It is designed so the elected officials have and direct staff to do what their priorities are, not staff telling what the elected officials to do. And one of the things that I think will really help change this dynamic, and that I'm actually going to be fighting for on the council and working with other cities to do, is recognizing that we also need to make sure these elected officials are being compensated fairly. Currently, our city council is one of the highest paid in the region, but is getting $20,000 a year for essentially a full-time job. Now, luckily, for me as a student, this is just as my, just getting into the labor force, that is something I could probably live on. I'd have to have a tight budget, but it's almost impossible. I'd have to have another full-time job to be able to afford to live in Santa Cruz. And to me, it's really getting so the elected officials have to represent their communities and make this their job. If they are working for a nonprofit or a developer and they're on the city council, that is a conflict of interest. So making sure that they have this as a full-time responsibility will be an important project of mine, and working with our neighboring communities to make that a commonality throughout our entire region. And lastly, I'll just say too, when it comes back down to the commissions, I was lucky to be appointed by Justin Cummings to be on the Substance Use Disorder Services Commission, where I've been doing good work to advocate for xylazine and fentanyl awareness and the overdoses that we've been experiencing in this county. And recently at our last Substance Use Disorder Services meeting, we talked about exploring a possible declaration of emergency for what is happening in our county to respond to the increase in fentanyl and xylazine. And luckily that was a very political appointment. I supported Justin. And that to me, I feel like it helps build our teams, but it's very political, and it can sometimes be a problem as well. And that's why I think it should be a more fair and open system, and have the ability to talk to people and really hear what the community wants and represent the people that you are elected to represent, not the highest donors who wrote a check to your campaign.
Okay, we got a little bit of time here, and so since I kind of forgot the opening statements, I'll give you guys, we'll go ahead and give you 3 minutes here at the end, but I also maybe, as you kind of have your closing statements here, if you could throw a little bit in about, I think it's pretty clear that you likely are going to be operating from a minority position on the council, and obviously you have a plan for that because you two are running. So it'd be great if you could kind of wrap that into kind of your overall vision of why you're running, why you're looking for the endorsement from Santa Cruz to Bernie, and we'll go ahead and go 3 minutes.
Thank you, and I've been a Santa Cruz to Bernie member for as long as I've been in Santa Cruz, and will continue to be, and excited to see where this organization goes as this next presidential election is coming up. But for me, why I'm running for Santa Cruz City Council, District 5, is to represent Sandy Brown's seat. And to me, I've learned so much from Sandy Brown, and having her mentorship in the seat is going to be really important for me. And she's been such an amazing councilman that we have, truly representing the people, and not the corporations, not the real estate interests, really representing the people. And I've been, honored. She's in North Carolina right now, otherwise she'd be here. But I actually live really close down to her, so I can bug her all the time now. But for me, it's really important that we have these conversations just like this. But I'm honored to be here talking to you guys tonight, and would really like to have further conversations with anyone who wants to talk about how we can really move these campaigns forward. operating in the minority is going to be a big struggle. And it's something that I'm kind of, reeling with now, how that's going to look like. And I think it's what I've learned from Cyndi is still finding ways to work with all the council members, no matter what, because there's going to be something that you can agree upon and you can work together on. We're not going to agree on everything, but it's finding those common issues to really move Santa Cruz forward and find out how we can make our community more beautiful for years to come. And so far, I just kicked off my campaign this last Monday. We put out a video. You guys can visit our website, which is votejoethompson.com. Social media is @JoeThompsonCA. And I've been honored to endorse by the UCSC College Dems, the Santa Cruz and Monterey Building Trades, Smart Local 0023, which is the bus drivers union, Congressman Rokana, and Sandy Brown has also endorsed me as well to succeed her. To me, it's having these progressive endorsements really shows that I will be a progressive advocate on the city council. And there's been some activists here who pointed out recently that the Santa Cruz City Council had in their strategic plan possibly another cop city for Santa Cruz. And that is something that I will absolutely fight against. And I'm so glad that they're doing work in Atlanta to fight against that, because we will not let that happen in Santa Cruz at all. And that includes pressuring our county board of supervisors to not allow that as well. So to me, it is really bringing our community together and recognizing that we need restorative justice, we need economic justice, we need environmental justice, and we need labor justice for our workers in this community, along with fighting for affordable housing and making sure we have equity, diversity, and inclusion. Because Santa Cruz is not where it used to be when it comes to this, and I'm honored to be running to represent the most diverse district in Santa Cruz City, but that's because of the UC campus. So thank you all. I have some buttons, literature, all that good stuff in the back, so please check it out and come talk to me afterwards.
Yeah, so I agree with yes to Joe, and that, it's a bit of a challenge to decide to run for a position when you know that you're likely going to be in the minority. It's unfortunate that nobody from District 1 or District 2 on the east side has made it past the hurdles of internal and external barriers to taking that leap. It is intimidating. On the plus side, running for a district is theoretically cheaper and easier than running as for an entire city. So I'm looking forward to that. My opponent will most likely be Shebra Kalantari Johnson. It'll be interesting to see whether anybody else joins the race. It could be tough, but I feel like even if I'm not able to be in a position of a majority, which would be wonderful, it's important to be a voice for justice that just gets it in the record, that asks the questions, that doesn't just let things pass by and just have the status quo become even more entrenched. It's important to get up and make the comments sometimes. And just to plug Reggie Meisler, my Santa Cruz Cares comrade. If you follow Reggie on Instagram, he made a really great clip of the city council meeting that Joe mentioned, where they talk about the strategic plan, and they really did not like the catchphrase about finding your joy in Santa Cruz, and it's pretty hilarious. You could not make it up, right? So follow Reggie, go look at that because it's hilarious. But I do want to bring, my website is joyforsantacruz.com. It's pretty easy. I like a pun. But I do think, reducing inequality, raising the floor for people who are on the bottom, finding housing where you can, whether it's people living in their vehicles or in a safer place, in a tent, that is better than the policy that we have had of enforced itinerancy, just moving people around and around. I could go on and on about that. So that's, the oversized vehicle ordinance really got me paying more attention to city council stuff and to the injustices that majority that's backed by the Real Estate Association of California. They are backed by outside interests and they don't represent us. So it's my time to stop, but in the back, I have some flyers and some Joy for Mayor buttons that are I did update the flyer, but if anybody's able to donate just a little bit a month, that would be amazing so that we can make better flyers, and I really look forward to being on the council. Thanks.
All right, thank you. One big round of applause for everybody. All and moving back over to Jeffrey, I think, and he can tell you what's going to happen next.
Thank you, Cyndi. A great hand for Cyndi Dawson leading We have a couple of announcements, and the first one is Kirsha Durham, and I'll let you, sure, here's the mic, and you can talk about your camera.
I'll be quick. I know people want to stand up and stretch and get out of here. I'm Kirsha Durham. I've been teaching in the area for over 30 years. I know about not having affordable housing. We can't even get substitute teachers to fill in because the housing is just so unaffordable. So I'm taking action because it brings us all hope to take action, right? So we have an initiative. We need to get 4,000 signatures by October. There's Fred back there, Fred Geiger with the petition. And the two things, it's very simple. We made this initiative simple so that everyone could understand it. There are buildings that are being planned that are going to be double the height of what is being built right now on Laurel Front Pacific. 12, they're still saying 20 stories. This is corporate developers, it's a land grab, right? It's not going to be buildings or housing for long-term local people or even new people. We welcome new people to the area. We're not a no-build situation. We want to grant city voters the right to vote. If developers who are in control now, if you don't know, if developers want to go beyond the city, the community took 7 years to create height limits in a general plan. And they're saying they can go up height and density as far as they want. We value environmentally sensitive, beautifully built, and thoughtfully designed cities. And our community decided on that. So number one, it would grant us the right to vote if they want to exceed the height and density limits that the community created. And then number two, it would increase affordable housing in all new development to 25%, to at least 25%. That's a start. We want to have more, but that's at least a start. And so we need to get 5,000 signatures. Anybody who wants to, I'm volunteering every day of my summer to do this. So if you can volunteer, sign the petition right now, get a petition to pass around your neighbors. We can get this done by October 8th. We need your help. Together we can do this. Yes, thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Kirsha. We may have another announcement by Sean Doherty.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I can't believe how many people are here. This is really amazing. Round of applause for Jeffrey Smedberg, please. It's 2023. I can't believe he's got this organization going so long. I've been with C4B for years. I'm normally a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. I made our website. I made Calmizer. Some of you might know that. It was used for virtual phone banking during COVID. We recently tried, sorry, I'm running for Congress, by the way.
That's the announcement.
Right, right, that's the announcement. It was in my notes and I forgot it. So listen, we at SC4B, a handful of us, tried setting up a meeting with Jimmy Panetta to talk to him about the situation in Ukraine. We wanted to talk to him about diplomacy, not escalation. He wouldn't meet with us. We couldn't even get 5 minutes with him, not even 1 minute. Wouldn't meet with us. So I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I gotta try to make a viral video, put it up on social media. Anyway, you can all see what I decided to do. I think we can get his attention, honestly. Let me just draw a few contrasts between him and myself. He wants to send F-16s to Ukraine. One of only a handful of Congress people, just 5 or 6, to sign that open letter calling for Biden to do that. He's also pushing for a Lend-Lease program to send billions of weapons to Taiwan to try to create a war with China. He hasn't made a public statement on cluster munitions. I have a very strong statement on that on my website, seanforpeace.org. He won't take a position on depleted uranium rounds. I've gone to his office in both of those cases, asking for a position, won't get one. These are war crimes. He also, I can't find a public statement from him on the Willow Project or the Mountain Valley Pipeline, okay? I have a toddler. I want him to have a habitable planet when he grows up. No more drilling. We can't do any more drilling. So visit my website, please, seanforpeace.org. I actually have a full platform. I describe it as basically being Bernie plus foreign policy. All right, thank you very much.